Welcome to the T.H.R.I.V.E. podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church.
How does your faith kind of play into it, or does it play into it?
What can be done about it? When I say the church, I'm talking about evangelical white Christians and the black folk who attend their churches.
Hello, welcome to the T.H.R.I.V.E. podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm Fred Jeff Smith, pastor of Shiloh, and I'm very happy that you're sharing with us, either viewing on Facebook or YouTube or listening to us on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Prime. As always, you can reach out to me and give comments about the podcast at fredjeffsmith@gmail.com, fredjeffsmith@gmail.com. I'm very honored and happy today to welcome back to the T.H.R.I.V.E. podcast Attorney Niles Haymer. Attorney Haymer is a candidate for city court judge here in Baton Rouge. Mr. Haymer, thank you for taking the time to come and share with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a blessing to be here this morning.
We're going to talk about your candidacy and the city court and things like that, but I have to ask you about the decision that just came down. As this is being recorded, the Supreme Court has rendered a decision that allows for the President of the United States to enjoy what I consider to be unusual immunity from criminal prosecution while in office. Let me read to you what Chief Justice Roberts said this morning. Presidents cannot be indicted based on conduct for which they are immune from prosecution. On remand, the district court must carefully analyze the indictment's remaining allegations to determine whether they too involve conduct for which a president must be immune from prosecution. And the parties and the district court must ensure that sufficient allegations support the indictment's charges without such conduct. Testimony or private records of the president or his advisors probing such conduct may not be admitted as evidence at trial.
Wow.
Now, of course, it's a much larger
It's a lot going on there.
Majority opinion, but that's just an excerpt.
So I would like to first start off by saying elections have consequences. Back in 2016, there was a push to get people out to vote who hadn't voted before, and Obama did a very good job at that in 2008 and 2012. In 2016, the turnout just wasn't what we thought it should be. So, of course, Donald Trump defeats Hillary Clinton. Nobody thought about the Supreme Court, and that was one of the major issues that Democrats should have been pushing is Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court. Donald Trump does 4 years and appoints, three judges?
Three judges.
Three judges to the Supreme
One of
Court.
which should have been an Obama appointee,
Yes.
but the Republican-controlled Senate withheld any kind of consideration for
Merrick Garland.
Merrick Garland.
They blocked him.
Yes.
They blocked him because they claimed it was an election year.
Right.
But then remember, 4 years later,
I do remember.
it was an election year,
Yes.
and they appointed the last justice they appointed. I know she's originally from
Amy
Metairie.
Coney Barrett.
Amy Coney Barrett. So the hypocrisy is obvious.
Yes.
But the elections that year had a lot of consequences. People weren't thinking about it, but as soon as he was able to appoint those three Supreme Court justices, which is a third of the Supreme Court,
Yes.
and then you combine that with Justice Thomas and Alito, you gained your majority right there.
Yes.
So you automatically have 5 ultra-conservative justices. Now, my issue with this latest decision is twofold. One, being that I'm going to be a candidate for judge, I have to acknowledge when I have a conflict of interest. You have to sit back and say, well, I can't do this. I have a conflict of interest. I used to do business with this company, and now you're suing this company.
Right.
I probably need to step aside.
Right.
I believe there were 2 justices that had a conflict of interest.
Yes.
That still ruled in this particular case. I believe it was a 6-3 ruling.
6-3. Yes.
6-3 ruling. That's Justice Thomas and Justice Alito.
Yes.
Clear conflict of interest because of issues with their spouses, and they still were able to weigh in here. I think at the end of the day, what the Supreme Court did, I wouldn't call this a landmark decision. I would call it punting the ball. They pushed it back to the trial courts knowing that there's no way possible these cases can be brought before the November election.
Right.
And when they pushed it back to the trial court, they said, hey, you guys figure out what are the official acts, because a president has absolute immunity for official acts, don't have immunity for unofficial acts. I believe that the trial judge, at least in the D.C. case, made that determination that these are unofficial acts. You don't have a get out of jail free card because you used to be president. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has decided not to decide the true issue. They said, we'll let the trial courts figure out what's official and unofficial. All it does is give the 45th president more time. If he becomes president, I believe we may have a situation where he's going to pardon himself or just appoint someone to dismiss all the prosecution. And then it comes down to the fact that I teach law school. And when I teach law school, I tell my students that no one is above the law. I actually feel like I need to put an asterisk by that.
Absolutely.
Because after the Nixon administration, Americans felt like, okay, no one is above the law. The president was held accountable, although he was pardoned by Gerald Ford. He was held accountable. He had to resign.
Yes.
In this situation, you have someone who has said he cannot be prosecuted, appointed the judges, two of which had conflict, ruled in his favor, essentially delaying the case, and will give him the opportunity, if he is victorious in November, to pardon himself or just dismiss the case. That is above the law to me.
Let's look at history for a second. You bring up Nixon. Based upon the ruling that was given, Richard Nixon did not have to resign from office.
I think Richard Nixon has a better case than
Absolutely.
Donald Trump. Richard Nixon was the president
Yes.
of the United States.
Yes.
And then the issue with the classified documents, Donald Trump was the former president of the United
Yes.
States. So Richard Nixon, his family and his estate should be like, hey, we should kind of help his image out.
Yes.
History has kind of looked at him as a failure of a president who was forced to resign. Now, technically, it's official business what he was doing. Now, of course, it's a cover-up of a burglary, but still, he was president of the United States.
In the capacity of president of the United States. I'm not a lawyer, you are,
Yes.
but as I read briefly this morning the decision, it suggested that any action that the president takes as president of the United States, he is immune from prosecution.
Any presidential action. And, to me, just from my standpoint, maybe you can have some of those arguments surrounding January the 6th, but post-presidency, leaving the White House with those classified documents, there should not even be an issue with that.
Right.
That is post-presidency.
Right.
He is not authorized to have those documents. So just to push it back to the courts, and the classified documents case is in Florida, and he has a favorable judge that he appointed in Florida. The D.C. case is not so favorable for him, but that's the case that's going to be impacted the most because that's the January the 6th case, and
Right.
he was president at the time.
Right.
So I don't know. It's going to be a situation for us legal scholars that we're going to have to kind of really realize that technically you can be above the law. The 45th president has showed us how you can maneuver the system and become an American citizen who is above the law.
Justice Sotomayor, in her dissent, said that you have changed the president from being a president to being a king with this decision. Do you agree with that assessment?
I would have to say I agree, only because of being a former president and still given this immunity. That's a problem. Unofficial acts, you have no immunity. But if you're a former president, what act is official? You are a former president
Right.
now. So for the classified documents case in Florida, it causes a lot of confusion. The case in D.C. with January the 6th, I understand more because he was the president. I don't agree with it, but he was the president. The Florida's case, they're going to have to explain a little bit more. I guess the lower courts will have to be real detailed in their rulings on the lower court level. When will it go back to court? I have no clue. I'm guessing all of this is after November the 6th.
Right.
But if he does not win, I do expect for him to be prosecuted in both cases, probably starting in January or February. They're going to be ready to get the ball rolling. This is me personally about the situation. You cannot wait until 2023 to start all of this, all these indictments.
Why did it take so long?
He stepped out of office January 20th of 2021.
Yes.
So if there were issues, you already knew about January the 6th. You were already indicting people for January 6th. The classified document case, I can understand a little bit more, but the case in Georgia, the case in New York, and the January 6th case, all those could have been brought in 21, 22.
Yes.
You know, you wait until 23 and 24, and it does look like, okay, you're trying to interfere with an election. It helps him with his arguments like, I'm a candidate, and this is what you're doing.
Right.
He wasn't a candidate in 23 until latter part of 23. He definitely wasn't a candidate in 22 and 21. That's when the prosecution should have gone through. So the Justice Department and the DA's office in Fulton County and New York, even though they got the conviction in New York, it is still around election time. So he can say, this is all political. This has nothing to do with me. This is them trying to interfere with an election. We have to have more courage to, if we see something wrong, something illegal, bring it when it's ripe.
Yeah.
If it's you or I, believe me, we would have been prosecuted within a month of whatever happening.
Absolutely.
So, again, like I said, he is proving that there should be an asterisk when we say that no one is above the law.
Yeah. I know why you're here, but
yes.
Just let me ask one or two more questions. What, as a child growing up, the federal courts were seen as the salvation of black people and civil rights. The actions of the court in '54, the support of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, the courts were seen as the last bastion of fairness for black people. What happened to the courts?
It became politicized. If you think about 2008, we celebrated like it was over. Racism was over. We just elected our first African-American president. I was one of the people that was like, finally, we done it. My grandparents would be proud. We have overcome. What we failed to realize is that it was going to cause such a big divide in this country that you spurn people like a Donald Trump from the election of Barack Obama. And then once you do that, you have appointments to the bench that are strictly political. You have to have a certain mindset. We always say when you're picking a judge, we want our judge to be impartial and fair. Nowadays, they want to make sure they know where you stand on certain things. And then when you go before Congress, it's just a wink and a nod. You just don't say certain things.
Right.
And then you get,
or they lie.
In
Because
the case of some of the justices,
when it comes to abortion rights, they out and out lie. Roe v. Wade was settled law. We're not going back into that. And then the moment they got into the seat, they went back and undid Roe v. Wade.
But again, it goes back to elections have consequences. We got too comfortable because we had our first African-American president and we thought it was over. We did not realize that they will begin to double down on certain things, get a little angry, elect a president who was going to push for, I would say, ultra-conservative views. And now we're saying, well, what happened to the courts? What happened? It happened because we did not go. When I say appointments to the Supreme Court, he only appointed 3 Supreme Court justices. But just imagine how many federal judges and Court of Appeal judges that he appointed.
Right.
All that matters.
Right.
Hundreds.
Right.
Hundreds.
Right.
So when you're filing a lawsuit because a district has been gerrymandered, and you take it to federal court when you thought that, okay, they're not going to be caught up in the local politics. They're going to look at this from a constitutional standpoint.
Right.
They're caught up in national politics now. So,
do you believe in lifetime appointments? Because the federal courts, on all levels, are lifetime appointments, which means that once they're in,
that's it.
They're in.
So, I don't believe in lifetime appointments. We have a situation in Louisiana where the law is at the age of 70. That's it. If you cannot be elected at the age of 70. You can serve as judge if you're elected before 70 and your term is still going on, but you can't be elected 70 and above. I just think that it's not so much the age, it's the time on the bench that causes the most problems with me. Back in the 40s, you had Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who won a fourth term, would have been president nearly 16 years.
16 years if he had not died.
When he died in office, they said, we got to do something about this. You know, we're going to have a situation where somebody can just abuse power.
Right.
So we're going to limit presidents to 2 terms.
Right.
Okay. But at the same time, when you have someone who has served as justice for 30 years and is no longer beholden to the American people because they can't vote for him, the Senate can't touch him, the president can't touch him, you can do whatever you want to do, and you have justices that are showing that they can take donations, they can allow political situations to enter their household and advertise it outside of their house. I feel like 20 years is a good term. 10 years, maybe 10-year terms, but I believe 20 years. 20 years, that's a long time to serve the country. I feel like you'll still feel accountable to the American people. But when you're there for life, we just talked about kings.
Right.
They feel like they're the court of the king.
Right.
Like they don't have to do anything. Nobody can touch them. And then it's a little unfair. The country changes, we evolve, and you have justices that may have been appointed and this is a couple of years ago, in the 80s and 90s that are still on the bench in the 2000s and teens.
Yes.
You know, that's a lot has changed.
Yes.
You know, you need to evolve with the country. You can't evolve with the country when you have, I think Justice Thomas may be the longest serving justice.
He and
right
Alito
now.
are close.
Alito was appointed by Bush. Thomas appointed by the first Bush. Yes. Alito appointed by the second Bush. So Thomas, 30 plus years on the bench.
Yes.
And a lot has happened and a lot has changed in 30 years. I believe our justices should reflect the populace of this country. We're ever evolving. We're always getting smarter and wiser. But if our justices sit in their own silos and never evolve with the rest of the nation, it causes problems. And you can kind of see that in some of the rulings.
Back to why you're really here.
Well, I'm here.
I really appreciate
That's okay.
your sharing.
It just can't. I just heard it in the radio before I pulled up, and I was like, oh, wow. So I know you, Rev. I knew that would come up. I was prepared.
You are a candidate for city court judge here in Baton Rouge. First thing I need you to do, and you did it the last time that you were here, but for those who might not have watched or might not be aware, what are the different levels of judges here? You have city court, you have juvenile court, you have family court, you have district court. So explain what your lane would be should you become city court judge.
Okay, and I'll try my best to explain it and not take too long doing so. So I'm running for Baton Rouge City Court Judge.
Right.
The seat that I'm running for happens to be a citywide seat.
Okay.
There's 5 city court judges, 4 have districts.
Okay.
And in about 2014, the NAACP, along with some other black lawyers, they brought a lawsuit because there were 3 white judges, 2 black judges for the city of Baton Rouge, which is about 55, 56% black. They felt like it wasn't fair representation. So instead of creating a new black district, they said, hey, to be fair, to take race out of it, we'll just make it a citywide seat. And that's what happened. The first judge that won the citywide seat was Judge T.H.R.I.V.E. Smith. He's now in the 19th JDC, and Judge Matthews ran for that seat in 2020 to replace him. So she has been the judge in Division C, citywide seat. There's only 2 citywide positions in Baton Rouge. That's the constable, and that's Division C, Baton Rouge City Court.
Okay.
There are other judgeships throughout Baton Rouge. You have juvenile court. You have 2 judges on juvenile court for East Baton Rouge Parish. You have family court where you have 4 judges that serve for East Baton Rouge Parish. And then everybody knows the 19th JDC where you have 15 judges that serve for East Baton Rouge Parish. Zachary has a judge for their city court, and Baker has a judge for their city court. Central and the New St. George, I know you're going to probably frown at that. They don't have courts yet, but I'm pretty sure one day they'll get their own type of court.
They got a police chief, but they don't have a police department.
They have a police chief, yes. I know,
That's a joke.
I know your stance. And actually, not the city, the position I'm running for is citywide, but there's been confusion because there's parts of Baton Rouge that lies in St. George, just like little islands of Baton Rouge and St. George. So when people ask, can they vote for me? I say, well, what's your address? And
Where
I
do you
gotta
live?
kind of look. Now, if they tell me they live on Jefferson Avenue, I was like, yeah, you can vote for me.
Yeah.
But if you say, hey, I live on close to Perkins and Bluebonnet, and it's Mayfair, I have to look at a map to determine if you can vote for me or not. Mayfair is Baton Rouge. Mayfair can vote for me, but people that live around that area, they may not live in Baton Rouge, and they don't know, and I don't know. So it's caused a little confusion. Yeah.
So, as a city court judge, do you oversee both criminal and civil cases? Just criminal, just civil, or what? What is your purview?
So, city court, I always like to tell people, city court is like people's court.
Okay.
So you have more people coming through city court than you do district court. And it's because you handle all the traffic tickets given by the city of Baton Rouge, Baton Rouge Police Department, evictions. You know, I've represented landlords and tenants in city court. Small claims are the people's court type of claims where it's not over a certain amount, not over $5,000, and it's unrepresented parties. They don't have lawyers. They just go in and say, he owes me $2,000. No, I paid you back. And you just making your argument in front of the judge. There's no evidence rules. All that's kind of laxed a little bit because you have lay people that are trying to pursue justice in their particular cases. And we deal with the criminal misdemeanors. And that's what a lot of people kind of hear about when they hear judges. They hear, if you're a judge, that means you handle criminal cases. But we do more than just criminal cases. But the criminal misdemeanors are DWIs, domestic violence, first offense domestic violence, misdemeanor theft. So it's low-level cases, but can have an impact on society because you try your best to get people on the right path so they won't have to go next door to the 19 JDC, which handles the more serious cases, the felony cases, homicides, armed robberies, all of those, 19 JDC. Also in Baton Rouge City Court, we don't have jury trials. It's just the judge making decisions. That's why it's important you make sure you have a judge that's fair, impartial, and has experience, you know. And I like to pride myself on the fact that I've been practicing for 20 years now. It's since 2003, graduated from Southern University Law Center, graduated from Southern University in 2000 and the Law Center in 2003. So I've been practicing 21 years, and I've represented defendants in Baton Rouge City Court in criminal cases. I've also been a prosecutor in Baton Rouge City Court, so I know both sides of the ball. And also, as far as the tenants, I just said I represented the tenants and landlords. And then, of course, I filed civil suits in Baton Rouge City Court. So I have a gamut of experience in dealing with Baton Rouge City Court. I want to say around 2020, it was 2020, when COVID hit, Baton Rouge City Court was in a peculiar position because now you have this pandemic going on. You have people getting arrested, and you're trying to figure out what we can do because the pandemic not only impacted the church and businesses, it really had a big impact on the jail. You didn't want to send someone into a situation where there's going to be a mass spread event. So we were trying to figure out how we can get people out of jail. And the first place they went to was Baton Rouge City Court and said, well, these people have low-level offenses. A lot of it's traffic. What can we do? So I was hired to be a city prosecutor because they knew my experience as a defense attorney. They wanted a hybrid prosecutor, someone who will work to hold people accountable, but work to get them out of jail so they won't sit in jail during COVID when it's dangerous for anybody. We wanted to make sure the people that were in jail were the people who needed to be there and not the people who just failed to pay a traffic ticket. So that's how I became a prosecutor, and that's how I made my mark at Baton Rouge City Court by resolving cases. Anytime people came to jail, they appeared before the judge on this video camera, almost like Zoom. And I was resolving cases in first appearance. That means that's the first time they came to court. Within 72 hours of their arrest, they saw me as a prosecutor, and I said, what can we do to resolve this case to get you out of jail, hold you accountable, but get you out of jail? There were some dismissals. There were some pleas, credit for time served, get you out. And there were some people that were released to be on probation. But the goal was to get people out of jail quickly, and we resolved 80% of cases within the first 48 hours. So we help reduce the jail population during COVID, but we made sure the people who were a threat to public safety had to remain in jail, but the people who weren't, who just forgot to pay a traffic ticket or didn't go to court 3 years ago on a simple battery charge, we got all of that taken care of. So it's one of the things I'm proud of.
Where are people who are charged with misdemeanors held? Are they held at the city jail downtown? Are they held at the parish prison up near the airport? Exactly where are they held?
Okay, so about a decade ago, the EBR district attorney wanted to reopen the city jail. There's a jail in the basement of city court, not big at all, maybe the size of this room.
Yes.
Not a big jail, but you can house people
I've
there.
seen it. Yes.
Yeah, you can house people there. It wasn't a good idea because the issue was in city court, we have over 100,000 outstanding bench warrants.
Sure.
That's a lot of bench warrants.
Sure.
A vast majority of which is over a year old. And another vast majority of which is nonviolent offenses. So we're not talking about people who are hurting people, who committed armed robbery. We're talking about nonviolent offenses, and most of them are traffic tickets, by the way. And they were trying to figure out a way how they can reduce that number, that $100,000 number. So they came up with, let's start putting people back in the city jail. It didn't work because you're picking up people who didn't pay a traffic ticket,
Right.
but they have to make it to Shiloh to pick up the kids from daycare.
Right.
You just taking them to jail.
Right.
And you get the phone calls, Reb, saying, I'm in jail, I need help. They say I didn't pay a ticket.
Right.
I got to pick up my kids. You cause more trauma to the community by trying to enforce low-level traffic warrants than you were doing helping the community. Their goal was to bring money and revenue back in because the tickets are outstanding. I'm a firm believer in setting up community warrant resolution clinics. Maybe at a church, because I would come into church to recall my warrant, because I know Pastor Smith says, hey, you can recall your warrant here, and I know nobody's going to jump behind the pews to arrest me.
Right.
Libraries. People are fearful of court, and that's the problem with the old way of doing things. I just missed a traffic court date, so I'm fearful to go in and say, Judge, I need more time, I need more money.
Right.
I know those judges in Baton Rouge City Court. They will give you time. They will give you time to take care of your business. But the general public, especially the African-American community, there's a fear there.
Highly skeptical.
Highly skeptical.
Yes.
Why not set up warrant clinics throughout the community, libraries, churches, community centers? Other big cities are doing it. I went to St. Louis. They have one every Friday in the library for people to come in and recall these minor warrants, to get on a payment plan, to talk to a prosecutor, and it's not in a court setting. It is in a room like this. It makes people feel better. Traffic tickets are what we call quasi-criminal, meaning it's civil, but if you don't come to court and you don't pay, it's criminal. You can go to jail. There could be criminal consequences. As a judge, I can't make policy. I'm not a policymaker.
I understand.
But if the policymakers could hear me, I would say they need to really look into making traffic matters civil, totally civil, because you're doing yourself a disservice for public safety when people rather drive without a license, drive without insurance, because they have a fear that if they try to take care of it, it will make their situation worse. But if you say this is civil, there will be money to pay, but we're going to have payment plans. We're going to have a sliding scale for you to be able to do this. We can go a long way in Baton Rouge. And right now, we're kind of just running on the treadmill with these 100,000 plus warrants. When I was in city prosecutor's office, I was seeing warrants from 1995, 1987. I was like, what are we doing here? And the person would be in court saying, hey, I didn't know I had this. I've been arrested. I've been picked up. There's a lot that's happened since 1987.
The most effective way that I have seen, and I'm not a lawyer, of getting people's attention regarding these traffic matters is when you find out that your license has been suspended.
Yes.
And quite often, it's not until you're stopped and a police officer asks for your information, you give it to him, and he comes back and says, did you know that your license was suspended? I've had that happen to me. It is a most troubling situation to be in, especially if it happens and out of town.
Yeah.
You know.
And if you have a very nice officer, you lucky they didn't say, well, it's time to go downtown.
Right.
You know, they can technically arrest you
They
for
can take
driving
you.
under
That's right.
suspension.
Yes.
Most officers don't do that. But in Louisiana, we have more ways to suspend a driver's license than any other state. I think it's Louisiana, Tennessee are like number 1, number 2, because you can be suspended for not paying your wildlife and fishery dues, suspended for not paying taxes, suspended no child support, suspended because you forgot to turn in your license plate.
Yes.
Didn't pay your insurance is canceled. We have so many ways to suspend your driver's license.
Yes.
But it causes a problem in certain communities because it becomes a money issue. So when you try to get your license reinstated, if you can ever make an appointment at the Office of Motor Vehicles, you know how that works. You know,
Want to know how it works? I can share with you how it works.
I want to hear.
I had my license suspended 7 years ago for failure to pay state income taxes.
Yep.
Paid the federal,
Yes.
didn't pay the state. Found out that my license was suspended. Went down, got the suspension taken care of. Well, I paid the tax,
Yes.
first of all. I went down and paid the tax. And then they sent me to the DMV. And the DMV had their own fee
Yes.
for reinstatement of your license. And you just had to wait. And for me, it was a 3-hour wait to have my license reinstated. And then they said, well, you need to go, and I can't remember where I had to go, but I had to go to a third place
Yes.
in order to get it taken care of. And so you end up having to drive around 3 or 4 different places. All the while, my license is still
Yes,
suspended.
still
but
suspended.
But I'm driving around with a suspended license
Yes.
going from one place
Yes.
to the other.
I'm not judged yet, so I'll forgive you.
to get this taken care of.
Yes.
There has to be a central location for
Has to
some of
be.
these things.
There has to be a central location. We're a digital society now. There's got to be a way you can do this digitally. The issue becomes when you have to reinstate your license. Let's just say it's a traffic ticket you failed to pay. You
Right.
owe $200 on the traffic ticket. You got to go in, recall the bench warrant. You don't necessarily have to pay the fine. Come back and show proof that you had the bench warrant recalled. Go to one or two. Well, if you go to the main office, OMB, they may send you to the reinstatement office.
Right.
Go to the reinstatement office. When you get an appointment,
I
you
think
have
that's
to
what
have
I
an
had to do,
appointment.
go to the reinstatement office.
Yes,
That
you
is
just
correct.
can't walk
Yeah.
in there. You have to have an appointment.
Yeah.
And when you go in, you present your paperwork, and then they're going to say, yes, your license is suspended. Here's the reinstatement fee.
Right.
Every time your license is flagged for not taking care of a traffic matter, you may have 3, 4, 5, 6 reinstatement fees to pay.
Right.
And that adds up. There's like
Yes.
fees for having your insurance canceled.
Yes.
You're talking about over $500 or so.
Yeah.
People don't have that money. So if you think of people who are living paycheck to paycheck and they have to come up with $500 to be able to drive, you know they're not going to choose to pay the $500. They're going to drive without a driver's license.
Absolutely.
They're going to drive without insurance.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm saying. We have to be smarter in Baton Rouge because it's more of a public safety issue to allow people to continue to drive without valid insurance and without a driver's license. Why not bring them in and say, hey, let's work this out. You can come to this warrant resolution clinic, no fear of arrest. You know, you're just coming in and we're taking care of traffic matters so you can get right back on the right path. I wrote a grant for the nonprofit I'm working for, asking for money to be able to help people that are in special programs at the court get money to get their driver's license. What I find out with people who are in recovery court, which used to be called drug court, and we have a pretrial recovery court, veterans court, domestic violence court. One of the issues they defendants have, they don't have a driver's license and they don't have the means to be able to get the driver's license. So why not have a system that says, hey, we believe in public safety. We want to help people be able to drive with their minds clear. Because if you ever driven with a suspended driver's license, you're kind of looking over your shoulder. You're
All
a little
the time.
paranoid.
Yeah.
That yellow light means stop because you're like, I'm not going to get pulled over by
Right.
the cops because I'm driving under suspension.
Right.
But why not make it easier for people to have it reinstated? It was only 5 or 6 years ago, I believe it was a measure by Representative Marcel that allowed you to do a payment plan. Before, you had to have the full amount. You know, if it was $1,300 DMV wanted from you, you had to have $1,300. Now they'll probably take like $300 and do a payment plan for the rest. But I still tell people some people don't have the $300.
That's correct.
So we need to get to a point in society where we're helping people and not putting up more barriers. The court shouldn't be putting up barriers in people's lives. And a lot of that happens sometime in these misdemeanor type traffic courts where we're just fines, and people are barely making it paycheck to paycheck. So I think we need to take all that in consideration.
I have a driver's license, a physical driver's license. I also have a digital driver's license.
LA Wallet.
On my phone. LA Wallet, yes. There are some places in the city, I'm not talking about police. I'm not as bad as people think I am. I don't get, there was a time when I got pulled over quite a lot. I have grown up.
Me too.
I've grown up a little bit.
Me too.
But I know that there are some places in the city that will not take the digital driver's license. It's not a problem for me because I always have my physical one with me. But my sons, 29 and 27, quite often they prefer the digital to the physical. Is there a law concerning that? Can businesses say, if you don't have a physical driver's license, we don't accept that?
The LA Wallet is supposed to be your official
That's what I
driver's
thought,
license.
yes.
So there's no exception to the rule. Now, there was a recent case where a young lady died in Tigerland after consuming alcohol, and there was an alleged incident with three males, and she died. But I believe she was underage and she was drinking. They discovered that she used LA Wallet. Someone sent her their LA Wallet. They happened to be over 21 and said, you just use mine. And I think a lot of businesses are scared that it's easily to be transferable, just send it to you in some type of screenshot image. But for the most part, your driver's license is your legal identification, whether it's the hard copy or the digital LA Wallet. So there isn't an exception. I just think business owners are just getting a little nervous because they think it's easily able to be used by someone who is not the individual. So.
Can I be held criminally liable for these camera shots of my car running through a red light? Again, I'm just asking a hypothetical. I didn't run a light, but there's a difference of opinion. I have a lot of lawyers in this church.
Yes.
And there's a huge difference of opinion as to the validity of these camera tickets that you get. I have one attorney who says he won't pay them for any reason at all. And he has sent letters to them saying that if his driving record is damaged in any way, or if his credit is damaged in any way, he's going to take them to court because it's not valid.
Yes.
I have other lawyers who say you have to pay it. So, Mr. City Judge, to be, what's your opinion about these cameras?
So there's two-part issue here. The first issue is when you go to court, you have a right to face your accusers. And, you know, if someone said that I ran a red light, usually the officer comes to court, and there's a little trial takes about 10 minutes or so. The prosecutor will call the officer. Officers testify that on July the 1st of 2024, I was sitting at Government and Eddie Robinson, and I saw Rev Smith just run through the light. And you would get up and say, well, no, I didn't. I have a witness who was in another car who saw that I didn't.
Yes.
And the judge will make a decision. With the red light camera, who are you cross-examining? You know, you have a right to face your accuser. Your accuser is technology. So a lot of legal scholars are saying, well, we don't believe this is constitutional. They feel like it's a money grab in a way, because if you've seen on the camera and running the red light, then and you don't come to city court, the parish attorney's office. It's still a city parish ticket, but the parish attorney's office take care of it. We have a hearing officer, Judge Luke Laverne, I believe, is the hearing officer that hears the red light tickets. The second part to this is, if you didn't go to court, you don't go to jail. It is totally civil. They keep sending you collection letters. So why can't we do that for other traffic tickets?
Right.
So I can see it both ways. I see it one way, like you do have a right to face your accuser, and your accuser is technology. Sometimes they'll send somebody who says, yeah, the camera was working, it had battery power, and it's accurate. That's all they can say, but they can't say, I saw you.
Right.
It's AI that saw you and not an actual person. So that's an issue. But the second part, I always said, if you can send red light tickets to collections, why can't we do the same thing with other traffic matters? You know, red light tickets are a serious public safety hazard. You know, you're running through a red light, you can kill somebody. Speeding is a pretty serious public safety hazard. But there's a lot of tickets that have nothing to do with speeding and red light violations that you can go to jail if you miss court or you fail to pay. And to me, if we move more to a system where it's civil, you just send people to collections, the barrier would not be as tall for certain communities when they know it's a civil matter. They're still going to have to pay because you're going to want to buy a house one day and you don't want your credit to be messed up.
Right.
But at the same time, you're taking the jailhouse out of scenarios involving these low-level traffic offenses. So I think I answered it both ways, Reb. I don't too much
You
like
acted just like a judge.
Okay, thank you.
You went right down the middle.
Thank you. But I see good things in not making it criminal. But yeah, you kind of want to face your accuser. So
how's your family?
Family is well. My wife is a Gremlin-nite. I believe your producer of the show is a Gremlin-nite. So I'm going to be very careful.
And I have several Gremlin-nites in Charlotte.
I saw that yesterday when I visited church yesterday. But my wife is a Gremlin-nite, and it's perfect, really, about 364 days a year. It's just that last Saturday in November, it gets a little dramatic. We have 3 kids. We have boy and girl twins. They're 14. They're headed to Baton Rouge Magnet High in the fall.
My school.
Your school.
Yes.
You and your sister's school.
Yes.
And we have little boy, he'll be going to the 7th grade at Glasgow Middle School. My kids are in the public school system, East Baton Rouge.
The reason why I asked about your family is because you and your family have gotten into the habit of making some of the most wonderful, wholesome, hilarious videos.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, how did that get started? How did you all come up with that idea?
So
I enjoy them. Every time I see them, I enjoy them.
And I'm going to make a long story very short. So in 2020, my office was burned to the ground. I had an office right across from Mount Zion Baptist Church on T.J. Jemison Boulevard, used to be East Boulevard, burned to the ground by an arsonist. The same day the governor shut down the state due to COVID. This is March 13, 2020. So I didn't have an office to go to. All my files are burned up. I'm sitting at home. My kids are celebrating because they don't have to go to school anymore. So within 2 weeks, we realized we got to do something. We're all in this house. We can't go anywhere. Masks weren't readily available, and I appreciate what Shiloh did during the pandemic, passing out masks because you couldn't find masks. You couldn't buy masks. I think I even sent my wife here to pick up. We were trying to find any place that were giving out masks so we can protect ourselves. But no, we were sitting at home, nothing to do. And the kids couldn't play with friends. They couldn't do much but go outside in the backyard. So I said, hey, let's do some videos. So it just started off as home videos that we only watch. And then I discovered TikTok, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, I love every time they come up. And I thought it was an ingenious thing to do. And it makes you and your family very accessible.
Yeah.
And so I really love it.
The Bayou Classic videos are the most popular.
Yes.
So I said I wasn't going to do them anymore because I'm running for judge, but by popular demand, there will be a Bayou Classic video this year.
Excellent. Excellent. And hopefully Southern will come out on the right side of this thing. Yes.
Don't tell your producer.
You can't blank that out. So in this run for city court judge, I know qualifying takes place. We're now in July.
July 17th.
July 17th.
Is
Okay.
qualifying.
Do you have a notion of who your opponents may be, or do you think that perhaps you might run unopposed?
Oh, it'd be great if I could run unopposed. I don't know if an African American running for judge for the first time has run unopposed. But I think I'll have some competition. So I'm looking forward to it. You know, I've been out. I started campaigning May the 1st. So I've been at this, today makes 2 months. So this isn't the first time I campaigned for public office. It takes someone who is really dedicated to serving the public to go through the process, because you talk to anybody who's run for office, it is a process.
Yes.
You just can't show up and say, vote for me because I have Bayou Classic TikToks.
Right.
You have to meet the people. You have to go into the community. The problem is, if you hadn't been in the community, they're going to know that.
Yeah.
But if you've been in the community the whole time, and I was talking to someone today, I work out at Planet Fitness, Delmont Village, and he was like, why should I vote for you? So I gave him this long spiel. He says, okay, you should have said, because you're always in the community. I've seen you at Tony's. I see you here at Delmont Village, Planet Fitness. I've seen you all throughout the community. So why don't you use that as your tagline? And I said, well, thank you, because I went through public defender, prosecutor, all this. He's like, you are a man of the community. Yeah. And that's the thing about it. I don't know about my opponents, but you have to have, for lack of a better word, street cred. People have to know, okay, he's not a fly-by-night person. He's been in the community, doing things in the community, and that's why I'm confident that the community, because the people decide these elections, the people will see that I've been a part of this community for the last 20-plus years.
As a candidate, and I know it's different depending upon what you're running for, it's quite expensive to run.
Yes.
Buttons,
yes,
placards, having to go to all of these various events and speak and things of that sort. How expensive is it to run for public office?
It is very
And is
expensive.
it worth the expense? That's the back half of that question.
It is very expensive. As a candidate for judge, judges can't ask people to donate money or anything like that. But I can tell you it's expensive. But the best part about it is that's why you have to already have been in a community. And people have to show you support. And the way they show support is through volunteering. It may be financial. It may be, hey, you can use this office. And that's because you know the people in the community. So they can take that sting away. But I will tell you this, the last time I ran in 2019 against one of your church members, Gail Grover, great juvenile court judge. We both ran for juvenile court judge. What we both realized is if people felt like they didn't have a stake in juvenile court, and a lot of the lawyers are like, oh, we stay away from juvenile court. A lot of people just didn't understand the importance of juvenile court. They don't really, they support, but they don't know how to support because juvenile court is foreign to them. So Judge Grover and I ended up spending a lot of our own money running for judge. Now I think people understand. In the last 5 years or so, they say, okay, we do see the importance of juvenile court. So I'm pretty sure it'll change. Running for city court judge, you touch so many different areas of the law. You know, landlords who own property throughout Baton Rouge, they're going to see city court judges at least once a month. You have debt collectors. You know, we have all these payday loan places all over the place.
Right.
When you don't pay, the debt collectors come through city court. You know, you have so many people who pass through city court that they want a fair and impartial judge that they can give you that support that you need to push you to the finish line. And that's why I like city court so much, because like I said before, it really is people's court. I wouldn't say that about juvenile court. Juvenile court is really keeping families together, trying to get the kids on the right path before they make it down to the 19 JDC. Baton Rouge City Court is people's court. You have everyday quarrels that are coming through Baton Rouge City Court. One of the ones that I remember was that I had to prosecute, believe it or not, was a guy who became a squatter. He just moved into a house and just sat back and just, you know,
you
got
read
cable.
stories about that.
Yeah.
And they seem like tall tales, that somebody can just move into a place, and if they've been there a certain length of time, they actually have rights.
The landlord was between tenants. So it was like 2 months between tenants, and somebody just decided to move in, cut the grass, did everything. Landlord got sick. 6 months later, landlord, who is this here?
Yeah.
You know, and it took almost an act of Congress just to get the person out of the house, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So it's those type of disputes that you don't think about when you think of city court. You just think of the traffic tickets. We're deciding cases, trying to figure out. You have tenants who are fairly paying their rent. The landlord isn't taking care of the property, so they decide to withhold the rent until the landlord does X, Y, Z. Those are the people that are coming through. You have people who don't have a place to live. This is their last place that they can live, and the landlord is trying to force them out for some reason. And you have to be able to make a fair decision, because landlords, that's their income. They have a right to make money. The tenants, that's where they live. During the pandemic, I watched every day. It was tough. Landlords could not evict. Tenants didn't have to pay. It was for 2 years.
Yes.
It was bad in Baton Rouge City Court, because landlords are like, I'm going broke. So what we started doing was, there were grant programs for landlords, and there were programs for tenants so they can help pay the landlords. We were just sending people to apply for these programs because the governor had a proclamation where nobody could be evicted for non-payment. So because of the pandemic, but just imagine what that did to people. And they were still coming into Baton Rouge City Court because there were still other reasons you can evict people if they're trying to burn down your property, tearing up things. But you still had 90% of the people come in for non-payment, and you had to have a resolution to that. So, you know, City Court is people's court. Any legal issue that's not major class action, homicide, armed robbery will probably be heard in Baton Rouge City Court.
One of the problems, and I asked you earlier to distinguish the seat that you're running for from other judgeships, the average guy, and my sister tells me this all the time. My sister's a lawyer, and she says, I am completely ignorant about the law. And so every time I say something, she says, just be quiet. You don't know what you're talking about.
That sounds like your sister.
One of the things that I don't understand is why there are so many different levels of court. You mentioned juvenile court, but then there's also family court. And family court and juvenile court are two different courts. And then there's city court, and then there's district court. So, and I imagine that while generally all of it has to do with the law, the rules are very different depending upon which court you are in. So, novice that I am, and the average person who is not a lawyer is a novice, we don't know what to expect when you're told that you have to go to court about a certain issue.
Hence the fear that we talked about earlier.
Fear and anxiety and things of that sort. Yes.
So, have you heard of Waterproof, Louisiana?
Yes,
It's
I have.
in Tensas Parish. The courthouse is actually in St. Joseph, but I would pass through Waterproof to go to court. I've practiced all over the state. The judge in Tensas Parish handles everything, from secessions to the traffic tickets to the juvenile cases to the family cases, everything. You have a parish that's probably 12,000 people in the whole parish. In East Baton Rouge Parish, we are the most populous parish in the state of Louisiana, 450-something thousand people in this parish. We do have a system where we have several courts, but I think if we only had one court system, it would probably be overrun with so many of these legal issues. So in Zachary, if you get a traffic ticket by a Zachary police officer, you go to Zachary City Court. You get a misdemeanor by a Zachary police officer, you go to Zachary City Court. Same thing for Baker. Traffic ticket, misdemeanor, Baker Police Department, you go to Baker. Central doesn't have one, St. George doesn't have one. In East Baton Rouge, you get a ticket from the sheriff's office, you go to district court. You get a ticket from BRPD, you go to city court. Why is that important? And if you're a juvenile who gets a ticket by any of these agencies, you go to juvenile court. Why is this important?
You just had my head spinning just through all of that listing of things that you just did.
Think about if Zachary Police Department gives a 16-year-old a traffic ticket for running a red light, that 16-year-old doesn't go to Zachary City Court. That 16-year-old goes to juvenile court.
And he's called a respondent?
He's called a respondent.
Did I get that correct?
You got that correct.
Okay, all right.
All right, so...
See, Sonny, I do know something.
Yeah, see, but we have a lot of courts in East Baton Rouge Parish, but we have the population for them. Although we don't have the most judges in the parish, I think that's New Orleans. New Orleans has 4 juvenile court judges. We only have 2, even though we're more populous than Orleans Parish. Family court, we have 4 family court judges. We have 19 JEC judges, 1 Zachary judge, 1 Baker judge, and 5 Baton Rouge City Court judges. So if you do the math on that, we have nearly 30 judges in East Baton Rouge Parish, all handling their dockets differently. So as an attorney, I feel like I'm going to 30 different courts when I'm going to court sometimes because judges have they like to do it their way, and although there's rules of court, local rules that we read over, judges have their own rules. As a lawyer who's practiced all over the state of Louisiana, I would love for a court to be all on the same page. So when a citizen goes through that court, that one judge, and let's say they have to come back, they're not like confused, like, well, I came to this judge in Division A, and now I'm at this judge in Division C, and y'all are doing something totally different.
Right.
We all need to be on the same page. We really do. It needs to be a situation where if the lawyers are confused, then you know the citizens who are coming in will definitely be confused.
Absolutely.
And I agree with you. We have a lot going on in East Baton Rouge Parish.
New Orleans is the only place, I believe, I lived down there for a few years, that had a criminal sheriff and a civil sheriff. Is that still the case? Because I've been out in New Orleans for a long time.
They have one sheriff, but they do have a criminal division and a civil division, but you're thinking of the clerk of court. They have a criminal clerk of court
Right.
and a civil clerk of court. We just have one clerk of court. They have two different clerk of courts.
Well, when I lived down there, there was a civil sheriff who ran the jail. And then there was a criminal sheriff who was responsible, supposedly the chief law enforcement officer for the parish. And the reason why I remember it is because one was black and one was white.
Yeah.
And
That
a
is
lot
confusing.
And a lot of distinction was made
Yeah.
about that. Is that the only? I asked that because I'm curious. Does Baton Rouge have anything similar to that?
No, we don't. And I don't think they're doing that anymore in New Orleans, even though each sheriff's office have civil division. Civil sheriff's office collects taxes. Sheriff's office serve lawsuits on individuals. So the sheriff's office does more than just law enforcement. They have a whole civil processing side. And then in the sheriff's office deal with foreclosures and all of that. And then you have the criminal side, the patrol, the corrections at the jail, and there's two different divisions, but it all comes under one sheriff, which is Sid Gotro. And our clerk of court's office is similarly set up with a civil division and a criminal division, but it all comes under one clerk of court. So I think New Orleans was probably, lawyers know this, we say, we call it the state of Orleans. 'Cause
Yes.
you have the state of Louisiana, and then there's always exceptions in the law for, they say the parish of Orleans, but in law school we used to say the state of Orleans.
Right.
They had their own rules.
Well,
but
we're
nobody
talking-
else did that.
We're talking primarily about traffic.
Yes.
When I was down there, and I was down there from 83 to 92, everywhere else in the state, you had to have an inspection sticker on your car. But in New Orleans, you had to have what they called a brake tag.
Yes.
And brake tags were very different.
That's the
from
orange,
inspection
that orange sticker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they still
Yeah.
have that.
So if you live in Orleans Parish, you didn't have to have a state inspection sticker, but you did have to have that brake tag. And if they didn't see your valid brake tag, they would boot your car on the spot. And then you had to hoof it to the court, pay your fine, and wait for somebody to come and remove that boot from your car.
Hence the state of Orleans.
Hence the state of
no other
Orleans.
parish in the state of Louisiana has even thought about doing that.
So there's nothing like that here.
No.
With all of the changes that are currently taking place, this new governor and a lot of things that he's doing that are not just state level changes,
Yes.
but they're going to affect cities.
Yes.
Are there any kind of draconian things, and draconian is my word, are there any kind of draconian things coming down from the state that you see as being problematic for the city of Baton Rouge or the parish of East Baton Rouge?
The first, well, because it's July the 1st, on July the 4th, open carry takes place.
Right.
So all these nice parades, homecoming parades that we like to have, we're going to have a big thing on 4th of July on the levee. About 15 years ago, they had a terrible shooting out there. If an officer sees someone with a bulge in their pocket, a firearm in their pocket, you can't inquire. It's their Louisiana constitutional carry right to carry that firearm. Usually you can inquire, hey, do you have a permit? Let me see your permit. Okay, go ahead, sir. Anybody can carry it now. So if I'm a Baton Rouge police officer, that's put me in a peculiar situation. Yes. And especially at these events, these homecomings. Now, the campuses are still firearm free, but the homecoming parade is through Scotlandville.
Absolutely.
You know, our Mardi Gras parade in Spanish Town is Spanish Town. It has nothing to do with campus, and 4th of July on the levee is at the river.
Right.
So there are going to be people that the officers are going to want to pat down, going to want to make sure they have the proper paperwork. They're not going to be able to do anything now. And that makes them feel less safe, and that makes the public feel less safe. But that's going to take place on July the 4th. And then you have what I think that's going to be very, very impactful is the fact that 85% of the time, no matter if it's a nonviolent offense or a violent offense, everybody has to do 85% across the board. The rules were a little different. It used to be 50% for nonviolent offenses, but you will get out based on good time, meaning you've done well in jail and you behaved yourself, so you can get out in 50% of the time. Then it went down to 35%. And then everybody else, even though it was 75%, but now it's 85% across the board. And you can do whatever you want to do in jail, all the programs you want to do, and it's not going to reduce your time. What incentive people have to better themselves while they're incarcerated?
Absolutely.
If they have to do 85% of the time, that's going to mean longer jail stays.
Right.
That's going to be more money that the state of Louisiana is going to be paying into the system. And then you're going to have a situation where people decided not to better themselves in jail because you're not getting out any earlier, that they're going to return to society with no skills and possibly put themselves in a situation to return back to jail. So those two things, I think, are going to be very impactful. Of course, you already know about the raise your age. Now, at 17, you're no longer a juvenile. I agree and disagree with that. The more serious, violent offenses, I understand, although the DA always had the right to charge 15-year-olds through 17-year-olds as adults if the offense is serious enough. Yes. But now they're saying at 17, you're an adult. So there were years I'll be at the 19 JDC and I'll see someone in there with a Capitol High uniform on, appearing before the judge, someone in high school. And we think of the serious offenses, but you're not thinking of the kid that decides to go in Family Dollar and take a couple of things out of Family Dollar, gets in trouble, and instead of going to juvenile court where they can give him resources and the services he needs, he goes to an adult court system that don't have all those resources.
And an adult jail.
And an adult jail, they go to adult jail.
Yes.
And there's a lot of issues with that because children have to be separated by sight and sound from the other adult inmates. That doesn't happen all the time. So, I think it's going to take a couple of years for us to see the true impact, but I think the impact is going to be more people incarcerated for lower level offenses, more money the state is paying, and who knows what's going to happen with the firearm situation, open carry. Because I'm just focusing on Baton Rouge, but you're from New Orleans, but you lived in New Orleans. Think about the French Quarter.
Yes.
Think about Bourbon Street.
Yes.
The officers used to can say, hey, you got a weapon, come with me. Now it's like, hey, I can't even stop you. I could be violating your rights.
Any kind of a bulge, it is not beyond the realm of belief that a police officer is going to assume that bulge is a weapon.
Yes. And the police officer is trying to protect the public. You have thousands of people in a small area. Even if you're rightfully defending yourself, you can always hurt somebody else unintentionally. So I prefer no weapons in my French Quarter.
Right.
But, with this new rule taking place July the 4th, new law, that's going to be different. So we just have to see. I don't know how it's going to work out. It's just 2 years from now, we'll sit down and have this conversation again, and I'll probably be able to tell you, hey, it didn't work like the governor thought it would work.
Right.
But I am very fearful of not just my safety, but our law enforcement safety, because they're the ones that are going to have to figure this out. And I know they're not thrilled about the new law, but we do have a Second Amendment, and they're deciding to make that Second Amendment more personal here in Louisiana. They're expanding the Second Amendment, yes.
Is Baton Rouge and is East Baton Rouge Parish over law enforcement? Is there too much law enforcement?
Yes and no. So and I feel like I'm answering your questions both ways all the time. So
I think it's a fair thing.
yeah, we all know about 2016, Alton Sterling,
Right.
The terrible shooting of the officers on Airline Highway, and then the Great Flood comes through. You know, it's almost biblical when I say it that way.
Yes.
There was a lot of tension between the community and law enforcement, especially the black community and law enforcement. And I believe that has kind of subsided in a way, but it's been brought back up again due to some of the issues with the Brave Cave that Chief Paul talked about before he stepped away, that those tensions are there. The court should try to ease those tensions between the public and law enforcement. You know, I work for a nonprofit right now, a criminal justice nonprofit, where we funded a program. It's called Lights On, where if you have a broken tail light, instead of the officer pulling you over, giving you a traffic ticket, and it's now a confrontational type of thing where I have fear that something may happen, the officer gives you a voucher to go to a local repair shop to have that repaired.
Okay.
You don't get a ticket. You don't say, hey, I'm going to come back and check.
I had not heard of that.
Yeah,
That's
it's
good.
called the Lights On program.
Okay.
And it is slowly but surely building up trust between the community and law enforcement. You know, and you need things like that. But there's always been talk about, we have the sheriff's office, we have Baton Rouge Police Department, of course, Baker, Central, Zachary have police departments. Now St. George has a police department.
No cops though. So
They have a chief.
You don't have to worry about St. George.
Y'all
ain't got no cops. None.
They have a police chief,
Yeah.
and then that doesn't include state police.
Right.
The universities have their police department,
Right.
including BRCC, and then you have Department of Public Safety.
And is
then
there
you have
not
the
a police
Capitol
department?
Police.
That's what I was about to say. For
And the
Capitol.
constable's office.
Yes.
So we have a lot of law
Hence the
enforcement
question.
agencies. That cost us a lot of money.
Is it too much law enforcement?
I believe it is. You know, it's funny, and I can say this because I'm a citizen of Baton Rouge, and I'm getting into another subject. It's okay to have a consolidated government. You know, where Baton Rouge, the city of Baton Rouge, doesn't really have its own council. It's a council of the full parish. But it's not okay to have a metropolitan police department,
Right.
which encompasses the sheriff's office, BRPD, and some of these other agencies. You can save a lot of money, but there's a lot of politics involved in this. And
Well,
they don't
some
wanna
would
do-
argue that the sheriff's office is a metropolitan police department.
is.
I would not agree, even
Well-
though the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer.
They have jurisdiction
but
throughout the
They
parish,
have jurisdiction,
even in the
but they
city of
don't
Baton Rouge.
exercise that jurisdiction.
true.
You see the sheriff's department show up in cases that involve unincorporated portions of the parish, and perhaps having to do with capital crimes, murders and rapes and things of that sort. But for the most part, the sheriff's office in the city of Baton Rouge lets the city police department
Yes.
handle those things.
Yes.
So if you were to have a metropolitan, following your suggestion, if you had a metropolitan police force, then the sheriff would become the de facto chief law enforcement officer for the parish, which I know
Yes.
on paper he is. But it would mean doing away with all of these local police departments, which would be troubling for me. I don't have a problem with Sheriff Gautreaux. Sheriff Gautreaux was good to me, and he and my father got along just fine. But I'm not sure that I want Sheriff Gautreaux to be the chief law enforcement officer for East Baton Rouge Parish.
So when you're thinking of things like this, you just can't think of one person, the person who currently has the position.
Right.
You have to think of, where we want to be in 2035, where we want to be in 2040, and hopefully the
2040,
person.
I'll be dead.
no,
But keep going.
We want to look at who is in a good situation to take care of all the needs of the parish. The parish will be voting on this individual because we
Right.
vote on the sheriff, but
Yes.
the sheriff is the sheriff. But with a metropolitan police force, it kind of ups the ante a little bit because now the mayor will not likely be appointing a chief.
Right.
Now the chief can't run in Baker, the chief can't run in Zachary. So the position of the metropolitan chief or whatever we want to call this person will probably become a top position in the parish, just like the mayor president and the district attorney and the sheriff, that Metropolitan Police will probably have more importance because now they've consumed all these other agencies.
On paper, if I'm and please correct me if I'm wrong. The three most the only three offices that are voted on parish-wide are mayor president, district attorney, and sheriff.
Clerk of court, tax assessor, coroner.
Okay.
And I think, and I hope I didn't leave anybody out.
Okay.
And that's it.
So,
did I say the DA?
yeah, I
Okay,
said the
DA.
district
Okay,
attorney.
yeah, so that's it.
I said mayor, president, district attorney, and sheriff.
And I added clerk of court,
right,
tax assessor,
right.
and coroner. Okay.
So, I have concerns about parish-wide. I'm really troubled by this push that the Metro Council did about having at-large seats on the Metro Council. What you're essentially doing is adding mayor number 2 and mayor number 3 to, and we've gone through this. That model was implemented and ultimately rejected.
It makes it more contentious.
Yeah, and
It's already contentious enough.
it's designed to dilute the power of the mayor president. I have said to the mayor, I have said about the mayor that I think the best hire that she has made in the time that she has been mayor president was Murphy Paul. Murphy Paul has made a tremendous difference. There would have been no Murphy Paul if the sheriff's office was the metropolitan police force.
But I see a difference. I see our consolidated government system as that's representation. You're voting for someone to represent your interests in your particular district. And there's a lot of arguments about how the city of Baton Rouge is diluted from that system because you have 5 Metro Council members for the city of Baton Rouge, which is the most populous city in East Baton Rouge Parish, and you only have 5, and the remaining 7 are from the outskirts of Baton Rouge. So I can see that argument of why the government should not be consolidated because you're not giving people proper representation. But when it comes to law enforcement, to me, it's like, hey, we are spending. I just went down the list of law enforcement agencies in East Baton Rouge Parish, and maybe you don't need one metropolitan law enforcement, but we have a lot of law enforcement in East Baton Rouge Parish, a lot, and it's costing us a lot of money too. There has to be a way to kind of dwindle that down, and a way to save taxpayers money, at the same time keeping the same services that they have through their agencies with the foreclosures and the service of process and the collection of taxes. There has to be a way to do that. And I don't think we're doing it the best way, but what we also have to do, we have all these cities throughout this nation. You can travel the country and see how other jurisdictions are doing what you're doing, but doing it better. And for some reason, we get trapped in this mindset that we need to keep it all Baton Rouge, keep it EBR, and we don't want to venture out and say, how is somebody doing this better and also saving taxpayers dollars? And, as an attorney, I'm always, when people are like, oh, I have this legal issue, I was arrested or I was pulled over, I'm always like, which agency? And they don't know. It's like, I just saw blue lights.
Right.
I don't know the agency.
Right.
And that's a problem for me as a lawyer because I don't know which court to go to, especially if you can't find your traffic ticket.
Right.
And come to find out, I'm in city court when I should have been in Zachary City Court. I'm in Baton Rouge City Court because it was a Zachary police officer that gave you the ticket, but they just see police and they just like, hey, I got this ticket, help me. And sometimes it can be a little confusing for the citizens. I believe we should save some money and think about trying to figure out how we can consolidate all these agencies. There's a lot of police forces.
There are.
If you have incident reports from LSU, incident reports from BRCC.
Yeah.
If there's an accident on LSU campus, you got to get the accident report from them. If it's City of Baton Rouge, State Police. It's just a lot. And even if it's not one law enforcement agency, maybe one office where you can get all the reports from any agency. It's like we're an interagency office. We can help you with anything from Zachary.
I certainly agree that there should be a one-stop shop where you can go in and find out where you're supposed to be in order to get your business handled. I have no problem with that.
With the driver's license too.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I get a little concerned about just one police force. When Baton Rouge is a diverse community.
Very diverse.
Louisiana as a state is one of the poorest states in the nation, but there is a lot of racial diversity, there's a lot of economic diversity, there's a lot of academic diversity within this parish. And I'm not certain that one single law enforcement office is equipped to handle all of that diversity.
And in other words, you're saying that we're too big for one law enforcement.
I don't trust them.
Yeah, I understand that.
The bottom line
They
is
got a lot of people
I
don't trust all the various agencies too. So
Right.
I do understand that. But there's an answer there somewhere. But like I said, you travel the country and you see how other jurisdictions are doing it and see if you can bring something like that back to Baton Rouge. But anytime you try to unconsolidate our government or form one big law enforcement, it's going to have to go to the people, and someone is going to have to make a very, very good argument for it. And in reference to our form of government, it's probably going to take litigation to get out of our form of government. But people keep telling me we're saving money by having a consolidated form of government, but saving money isn't always the best thing when representation may not be as fair as it should be.
Once you become a judge, you lose a certain degree of your advocacy privileges.
Be out the window.
Have you thought about that, and does that in any way concern you?
So my wife loves the fact that I will have to keep my mouth shut. Let me just start there. But there was a time that if I saw something wrong, I would be loud and proud about it. You know, I was out filing motions against Confederate monuments in front of courthouses.
Yes.
You know, loud about it. But you know, there comes a time when you want to be fair and impartial to anybody that's coming before you. And in order to be fair and impartial, you can't be spouting out on every single issue that comes across your timeline on Facebook. Although I want to a lot of the times, my wife would prefer a TikTok over me raising the issue of why this person is still on the school board when they said X, Y, Z. She likes the fact that by being judge, you're not in policy making. You're not a part of a lot of the issues that are going on in the community. Although you want to know about it, you want to present yourself to be as fair, as impartial as possible for the people who are coming before you. And you can't do that if you're weighing in on every single, because if you watch the news today, there's shootings out there. There's people who are a domestic violence situation where 3 people were killed in Livingston Parish, and more people than that. I want to say 4 were killed in New Orleans.
Yes. Domestic
violence situation. And you don't want to weigh in and talk about any of that that's going on, but you do want to express that domestic violence is it's already been bad in our community, but for some reason it's getting worse. We talk about crimes. A lot of the crimes are going down, but domestic violence is currently increasing. But you want to be able to not have to worry about, you know, the presidential election, how bad the debate was the other night. You don't want to have to talk about those things because you are a fair and impartial judge who is just looking at the facts and the law. And by throwing out the debates were terrible and this person said that and that person said that, you know, the person coming before you may say, I'm a Biden person.
Right.
And you said he was very sleepy at the debates.
Right.
I have a problem with you being over my case. You don't want to run into issues like that.
Right. I know that you're a man of faith. I know that your family is raised under a certain covenant of integrity and morality. Yeah. Could you just share with the audience how your faith plays a part in your practice of the law and in your decision to run for judge?
It plays a big part. So I always thought that when I was younger, a young attorney, you always feel immortal when you're in your 20s, like you can do anything.
Yeah.
And you go to church, but is church in you? And I used to feel like in my 20s, I could do whatever I wanted to do because I was so young. I could hustle the streets and get cases and file lawsuits. But the older you get, you start to realize that in order to continue on this business, you have to have God's favor. And you have to be a believer in the good that he can do for you. There's been tough days where I wanted to give up. I had a situation where a client was killed in a shootout, and I was out there when it happened. I was trying to talk him out of the house, and he didn't want to come out, and it was essentially suicide by law enforcement. But when you start to see things like that, and you start to see families torn apart due to homicide, and families where the child committed the homicide, he's gone away from life, you have to be strong in your faith in order to continue on and believe that you can make an impact. You have to feel like you're doing God's will. And that's what I felt like in my 30s, not so much as my 20s, but in my 30s, once I got married, had my children, I saw life differently as a lawyer. No longer, hey, I'm trying to make money, yeah, I'll do some justice here and there, to I want to make an impact and change people's lives. And I feel like in the last 15 years of my practice, that's what I focus on. It's no longer like, are you going to pay me more? It's like, I think I can help this person. Don't worry about X amount of dollars. I think we can do something to help you out, because I feel like it's God's will to be able to do these things.
Your kids are growing up.
Yes.
I generally ask this question of guests regarding their children. I know it's the child's decision, not your decision. But as you see your children growing, and as you witness what takes place in Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish, do you want your children to plant their flag in Baton Rouge, or would you prefer to see them move away?
That is the number one issue facing parents in the East Baton Rouge Parish. That should be the number one issue in the mayor's race. Because, yeah, we have all these other things going on, but the children are our future. And if they don't want to stay in Baton Rouge, then we're not going to have much of a Baton Rouge. My children are more like me than their mom. Their mom is in IT. She's computer. She loves technology. She can do graphics. She does all that. She doesn't understand all this law stuff. My kids are more like me, more like you. They're going to speak their mind. And I feel like Baton Rouge could be a good place for them to live, to continue on what I feel like is a legacy here in Baton Rouge, and making sure, from my standpoint, that the poor is taken care of, and making sure that all voices are heard. And the reason I say that, because I feel like I have two kids that are probably going to be lawyers. But I understand if they decided to leave Baton Rouge, because Texas is like, just when you go over there and you see the stadiums at their high schools and you see the roads, and it's like a whole new place, but we're right next door to them. But at the same time, I believe in order to make Baton Rouge better, if you want Baton Rouge to be better, you got to hope that your kids will be willing to live in Baton Rouge to help it be better. And I know there's all these campaigns, Better Baton Rouge, and all these things going on to bring more professionals to Baton Rouge. We had someone in town that's trying to get a job at the courthouse, and we were supposed to be taking him out, and he told me hopefully he'll move from North Carolina. That he told us he had 4 children. It's like, so I have 4 children, so what should I do when I move here in August? And I'm thinking, oh man, I hadn't even had a conversation about the school system. I hadn't had a conversation on where you should live. So I got a little kind of nervous about it, and I said, no, Baton Rouge, like you said before, very diverse. Food is great. The music is great. The culture is great.
Yeah.
Having faith in Baton Rouge is great. There's so many opportunities here in Baton Rouge. You have the largest HBCU system, the only one in the nation in Southern, and you got the largest flagship school in the state in LSU, all right here in this city.
Yes.
But it's Baton Rougeans that act like second-class citizens, and it's people that are not from here that see the bright side of Baton Rouge. We have to start seeing the bright side of our own city and try to keep our children here. It's hard to do, but I think in order for Baton Rouge to be a better place, the children of Baton Rouge need to be able to have an opportunity here and be able to remain.
Look into that camera, that's your camera, and explain to the public why they should vote for Niles Haymer for City Court Judge.
I am Niles Haymer, and I'm running for Baton Rouge City Court Judge, which is a citywide seat. I ask for your support, and I ask for your vote, not because I'm on TikTok, but because I do believe in the citizens of this city. I do believe that we can all be better if we work together. We can make a difference. And the reason I say that as a judge is I will have the opportunity to talk to people when they come in on low-level offenses and get them on the right path. So hopefully they won't be going to that bigger court, which is the 19 JDC. We can take care of everything in city court and get them on the right path. So I am asking for you to consider me as your candidate for Baton Rouge City Court Judge. If you live anywhere in Baton Rouge, Zion City, the Park, Dixie, Garden District, Beauregard Town, Spanish Town, south of LSU, you can vote for me. So I ask for your vote, I ask for your prayers, and I ask for you all to go out and vote November the 5th. That's presidential election day. You always can vote early, but November the 5th this year. Thank you.
Mr. Haymer, thank you for taking the time to come and share with us. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next time.